The one thing that could have kept me in Fort Erie, Ontario. The year I left Fort Erie, Ontario, a border town flanking the Niagara River, its population was just over 20,000. To date, there's no movie theater in Fort Erie, not one underground parking lot. The town library is a single-story building, as is the shopping mall. Fort Erie is big in other ways. It sprawls 62 hayseedy square miles. It can take half an hour to drive from one end of the town to the other, in a car, that is. Seniors, youth, and residents too broke to own a car, which is a fair few, I might add, ride the Felt, Fort Erie Public Transit, or fucking excuse of a people trolley, as it is lovingly called by the townies. A single blue school bus that, between the hours of 7:30 a.m. and 7:30 p.m. will pick you up just about anywhere from cow pasture to bingo hall. I grew up on 32 acres of birch and maple forest dotted with enough edible fiddleheads, choke cherries, and wild mushrooms to survive off of for at least a few days. Living off land was a family value. You see, the Vietnam War, the Summer of Love, and Pierre Elliott Trudeau brought me to Fort Erie. As Canadiana goes, it was a time when our nation openly welcomed U.S. Vietnam War resistors, my father, whose draft card was just about up, included. Ma and Pa got married in 1969 in Buffalo, drove across the Peace Bridge, signed some landed immigrant documents at the border, and proceeded to the unspoiled stretch of land they and their hippie friends had purchased as an optimistic landing point for their turn-on, tune-in, and drop-out dreams. What my parents didn't think through in their wonder years was, how the fuck were they gonna raise a teenage daughter in the hellhole of Canada? A place where the top 3 activities for youth were fighting fisticuff in an empty lot, jumping off the train bridge into the rushing Niagara, or getting drunk on bootleg gin, which the local barkeeps would sell to any kid with allowance money. You should get a job, my mom urged. She had taken up the habit of looking into the distance when she spoke to me. My black dyed hair and illicit slapdash tattoos hurt her eyes. But she held my hand like she always had, her square, meaty palms bigger than mine, no matter how old I got. Soon you'll graduate. Then what? Then I'll leave and never come back, I threatened. Well, you better save some money then. This is it, honey, said Deb, motioning towards the twin bar stools and metal lock boxes crammed inside the 4x4 booth. She set me up with a dog-eared list of ticket prices and a cash float, new 5s and 10s spun through her vaudevillian fingers. Good to go, she said, slamming down the cash box on the tiny countertop. The other girl gets here in half an hour. You show her how it's done, honey. Through the plexiglass window, I watched Deb march across the midway, her back-combed hair bouncing with purpose. Neon lights flickered on in her wake, and by the time Deb has finished her rounds, the entire park was a tizzy battle of classic rock versus circus jingles, toasted caramel versus the alluring aroma of corn dogs, and droves of hyper children hassling their parents for money. 20 tickets, they'd shout at me through the circular cutout in the plexiglass, their brats bouncing around them like popcorn kernels. Just as I caught my foot starting to tap in time to the vexatious tune of the carousel, the other girl came pounding at the door. I flipped open the rusty latch to find Annie Caruso standing outside, her hand poised mid-air, ready to pound some more. She was my enemy. We never scrapped it out after school. I had enough sense to avoid all 5 feet, 11 inches, and 170 pounds of her, but rumor had it I was as good as toast ever since I made out with her gross ex-boyfriend. We stood in silent deadlock for several long seconds. Annie bit her glittery lip-gloss lip, nervous-like, and I mustered up the courage to say, "What you gonna do? Throw down with me right here?" I turned my back to her before I had a chance to rethink my words. As I slid the first boy his strip of tickets, Annie took her place on the adjacent stool. Tiny booth was a tight fit for her, and she had to work pretty hard to keep her leg or shoulder from touching mine. And she was slow, or at least not as quick as I was with cash. I couldn't stand seeing the lineup getting too long. I was a real carny after all. So I gingerly dropped into her transactions, whispering, $5.50, 10 even. American money is on par. Apart from my muttering calculations, we did not speak until the very end of the night when Annie offered me a ride home. Just don't laugh at my dad's heinous station wagon, she said. Yeah, my ma's picking me up. Okay, said Annie. See you tomorrow then. After she left, I compulsively recounted quarters and dimes. Beside me, the stamp of Annie's thighs remained on the empty metal stool. I traced my index finger along the thin line of sweat where her inner thighs must have met, then fought an unsettling urge to stick my finger in my mouth. This is my first memory of a long-standing obsession with the lovely perspiration prints sturdy girls who wear short skirts leave behind after sitting. The night after, there was fireworks. Our foreheads against the plexiglass, we struggled to get a glimpse of the rainbow sparks just outside of the view from our booth window. I hate it here, I told Annie. Oh, I don't mind if you go outside and watch the fireworks, she offered. No, not in here, this booth. I hate the whole fucking town. Annie produced a 26er of stolen cinnamon schnapps from her backpack. This will cheer you up, she said. I choked on my first sip. Don't get us caught, stupid. Annie snatched the bottle from my hands. Twisting her curvy weight, she squatted under the narrow countertop, out of sight from the ticket window. I watched her throat quiver as she swallowed. A fat tear pushed itself out of the corner of her left eye. I squeezed down next to her on the booth's grimy floor. The bottle clinked against my teeth as Annie thrust it at me. Ouch! I clapped my hand over my mouth. Baby, she hissed. But she placed a finger on my lip as if to check for blood. A second finger met my lip. Then my chin was in her hand. Annie took a long swig, tilted my head back and cupped her lips over mine. Red hot liquid ran over my tongue. For a moment, her sun-freckled arms were around me, and a moment later we were back to peddling tickets. Flashing lights and whistles flogged our booth, making me dizzy. After our last shift together, Annie drove me home. The carnival was being torn down as we left the park. Funhouse folded into cargo boxes. Stray carousel horses lay in the grass. It's my dad's, Annie explained again, crinkling her nose up at the old woody station wagon. There was no radio, only the impossible distance of brown upholstery between us, the occasional squeak of Annie's thighs against the vinyl seat as we drove the back roads. You're really going with the carnies? She asked. Like my parents had done 20 years before, I was ready to cross that border and never look back. But I held on to my answer, trying to guess what Annie might have wanted to hear. Do you want me to stay? Is what an older, braver me would have asked. But instead I ummed in teenage idiocy. I was still turning out some dumb response when Annie slammed down the brakes. If there was uncertainty in Annie's eyes as I eased her t-shirt over her head, I could not see it. The freckles on her breast, baby hairs below her belly button, stretch marks, scars, the color of her nipples, I saw none of these. Just darkness, small town darkness. She said, "Oh," and "This is crazy, this is crazy." I didn't need light for my hand to find its way inside her cotton underwear. We didn't need words to know that only once, in the bucket seat of her father's car, was all we had. Annie became a bank teller in downtown Fort Erie, had 2 kids and a husband before the age of 22, and now owns a house with a big backyard. And me? I toured with the carnival, hitchhiked some, hopped a train once. The world soon proved that it was not so small. In turn, my young heart soon proved to hold more than wild angst. It took many women to teach me this lesson, how love can open you, lay you wider than dawn's horizon line. It is a road I doubt I will ever quit traveling.